Hey fam, it's the beginning of another week already, and I feel like personally time's going so fast, so yeah, we're back here, and usually I would have some cards with me, but I don't today because I felt like my ancestors and source wanted to do something kind of different. I felt like they wanted me to share on ancestral healing, or I don't know where they're gonna where this conversation is gonna go, but yeah, it is a Kwasidae, which is an Akan, West African, I think specifically Ghanaian, ancestral day of reverence that falls every sixth Sunday, and it's Sunday here in Aotearoa. I wanted to speak on I guess what the practice means to me, because it is a practice and it is like a part of lifestyle. It's not just like this specific day. And I felt like last week, moving through last week, a lot of the collective messages were about us reconnecting, strengthening our connections to our ancestors, what that means, etc., etc. So yeah, maybe I'll just talk a little bit about that. So if you're new to the whole ancestral reverence, or what else can I call it, ancestral elevation, or kind of thing, or connecting with your ancestors in simpler terms, to connect with your ancestors just means to can mean a few things. Can mean connecting with your literal ancestral lineage, so the people that have passed on before you that are no longer here. It can also mean connecting with the land, connecting with nature, because especially in particular the land that we whakapapa back to, or our lineage specifically actually comes from. But obviously we can connect with all land, and land is our ancestor. We all come from land, so yeah, we have our ancestral lineage, our within our blood DNA, and then we have the land as an ancestor. So I guess there are so many different ways to connect with ancestors, but I would say those are the main things that I'll probably touch on today. I think ancestral... Oh, there's a question. Why is ancestral healing or connection so important? I think to me, ancestral connection is super important because I am also a part of my ancestors. So as I connect to my ancestors, as I connect to the past through my ancestors, I know where we have been. And when you know where you have been, you know how to move accordingly, even personally as an individual. If you look and reflect back on your past and know where you've come from, your experiences, the things that have made you happy, the things that have hurt you, the things that have made you who you are right now, that's exactly the point. It's like all those experiences have made us what we are right now. And that's the same within our ancestral lineage and the DNA that we're connected to. So looking back at the stories of our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, and even like hundreds of years back can connect us to who we are right now. And from an indigenous level, I'm Akan, I'm from Ghana. I've grown up in Aotearoa. I was born and raised in Tāmaki Makaurau in Auckland. But as an Indigenous person, and even saying like particularly connecting to my ancestors on another Indigenous group's land is also a thing within itself. And I think because within this time and within history, like, we have been travelers, we have been like scattered across the globe, but we've still been able to connect as Indigenous people. So it doesn't matter where you are, you're able to connect with your ancestors, and you can bring in certain practices that help you connect. For me personally, I go with a lot of, I guess, African diasporic, is that how you would put it? Things that are used for ancestral connection and reverence. And then I also go into my West African heritage as well, to connect in that way. Or things that are commonly done. If you follow me on here or on my Instagram, I'm always talking about libation. So the act of mimicking the rain that's falling from the sky and fertilizing and nourishing the soil by getting a glass of water and pouring onto the earth and adding my prayer to it, or adding our prayer to it. There are other things that we can do, like give offering to our ancestors, which can be like food, setting up an altar space in your house with photos of like your loved ones that have passed, and connecting with them whenever you feel, lighting candles for them, even singing to them, I feel like is a very common thing among Indigenous peoples, and dance as well. So yeah, offering doesn't just have to be food or water. It can be like what you actually do with your body as well. And something that ancestral connection, or connecting with my ancestors intentionally, has done for me is just to reiterate who the fuck I am. I think I began my ancestral practice or maybe like 5 years ago, when I had just left the church. So I was a part of the church for most of my life, actually. And then I felt like that wasn't nourishing the person that I was. So I moved into connecting with my ancestors. I can't even particularly remember the experience that I had, but I know I had one. And I was just delving into other kinds of spirituality, as you do when you're exploring. And so I really connected I went into my own culture to find the answers for that, and doing my own research even into other West African practices like Ifa, and the basis of all of that is your connection with your ancestors always. So that's where I began. And it's really just made me grow in the depth of who I am. Because we can know who we are to a degree, I feel, but like to actually explore the depths of who you are within the stories that have, happened through time, and the richness and wealth within those stories, and the deep, deep connection that we have through the land, through those stories, is just like, is honestly amazing, and it's enriching is what I can hear myself saying. And when you realize that you come from such wealth, you can't not look at yourself differently, or move differently, connect differently, and heal as well, and move into a space of thriving instead of survival mode always. So my ancestors have really yeah, there's no one closer to me than my ancestors, and there shouldn't, I don't know, in my opinion, there shouldn't be anyone closer to you than your ancestors. I mean, they have your back. And the more that I've actually like intentionally connected with them, because there were periods of time where they were just around, you know, I could sense them around. I was acknowledging them, but I wasn't giving any offering. I wasn't really, maybe I was talking to them sometimes, but there wasn't anything that I was overtly doing, you know. I felt like the first maybe couple years was them just coming through and acknowledging their presence, or making their presence in my life more like in my face. Yeah, and so then after that, I think that's when I actually got into like learning about what I can do, because I think through connecting with them, I learned, oh, I'm an ancestor. I'm an ancestor as me, living, breathing right now. And I'm the ancestor that like you'll want to connect with too. And that's exactly the same with everyone else. Everyone's ancestors. Oh, and I guess I must point out, like, not all our ancestors have our best interest in mind. So these would be our higher ancestors, our ancestors that operate out of love and healing. Yeah, maybe I'll get into that today. Maybe I won't. But yeah, so everyone's ancestors are wanting to work through us, higher ancestors. And we have to allow the room and space for that. And I feel like I did, because I was craving some shit. I was craving so much. My whole being was craving so much. And I'm such a sensitive being that's connected to the earth naturally. And because I didn't really have that connection, they really like reconnected me. In ways that I can't even, yeah, it's still such a journey and a blur, but connecting to ancestors is really strengthening for self. If your confidence is like not strong, connecting with ancestors will help with the confidence. If you're unclear on where you want to go in your life, or even how to create the steps towards what you want to go, your ancestors know exactly the navigation map to like get you to where the fuck you want to be. And I'm so about it, because for each individual to connect with their ancestors authentically and intimately, because we're so disconnected, you know. And I mean, not all of us, but like this day and age, there's so much disconnection. There's so many things that are blocking us from connecting to who we're meant to be connecting. There's so many things blocking us from, yeah, connecting the way we're meant to be connecting. And it's a shame. But there's also a beautiful stirring that has been happening over the last couple years, I feel. But I do feel like, as like everything else, which I did speak about on my story on Instagram, that like, just like everything else, you know, people grab onto it and then act like it's this, and then like make it shallow. And I get so annoyed, because I don't know, as a ancestral practitioner, because that's what I am, is, yeah, it's hard work to really connect with your ancestors and cultivate that connection, you know. And you're not always going to see the results of what you're putting into yourself, your healing, your releasing of intergenerational trauma and patterns that have been carried down for generations, like generation after generation, like, and then you're the one that is like called to release some of those things, you know. It's not easy. And I think I said as well, like, there are so many of us like this that are really switching things up for our ancestral lineage, and it's beautiful, but it's hard. But if we know that we're doing it together, that also makes it a lot easier. So that was also one thing that helped me on my ancestral journey, was to know that I have community. Leaving the church was quite difficult in that sense, because I left my whole family, you know, to come and venture out. And I don't even mean my blood family, I just mean everyone that I had connected with and like grown with over time, spiritually, emotionally, you know. And I was the type of person that was at church 4 days a week, 4 or 5 days a week, you know, like I was going hard, which is fine. But yeah, it was a really big shift and change. And I don't think we realize, like, leaving, if you have come from any sort of other religious background, and leaving that to come into something else is, yeah, it can be very isolating. And so my ancestors, I felt like, covered me so well. And I love them so much for the work that they did with me during that time, because it's not easy for our ancestors to do the work as well. They're still doing and healing in other places, because Earth isn't the only place that exists, you know. And if you're Indigenous, then you know that. Or I hope that you do. There's so much more beyond this dimension, beyond this time, beyond what we interact, who we interact with on a daily basis. There's so much more going on, you know. And that's what I also love about African spirituality, or even just ancestral veneration, uplifting, connection, because you start to tap into Indigenous alchemy. Even if you're not intentionally trying to, you will, because even me speaking right now, if I start talking to my ancestors, and I'm creating some sort of alchemy with my life force, with my breath. Yeah, and I think connecting with your ancestors, you begin to realize how powerful you are. Yeah, and that's why I hold myself the way that I do. And because there's a knowledge of where I've come from, and it's not just where I've come from, it's where I am now, like how I got here and how I'm meant to carry myself forward, what I need to do as a part of this ancestral lineage or this line of ancestors. And then you start to realize how important your life is, you know. I was someone that was super depressed, suppressed in my existence as well, growing up, not knowing I was queer and not knowing I was agender non-binary is a whole nother thing. But my ancestors quickly led me, after I left the church, quickly led me into realizing who I was. And they can really help with easing through transformational periods, because transformational periods, especially if you're a sensitive being, you're connected to the earth, nature, your intuition is strong, you know, it's very like intense, physically, emotionally. And if you're not grounded, if you're not protected through, then, you know, it's hard, and it can really like affect your mental health, can affect any area of your life, your relationships, you know. And I think this is something that we don't really talk about. Yeah, and so I think that's what they were also saying in what I just said, is ancestral protection. That's another thing that my ancestors, I feel like connecting with my ancestors has done for me, has protected me from so much. And the more you begin to connect with them, the more you know when they're speaking to you, however you personally speak to them. It doesn't have to be out loud like I'm talking to you now. It can just be, you see a gust of wind through the tree and you just know what that means. I don't know. everyone's different, but everyone has their own individual way of connecting, and you find the hints of that through also what your ancestors maybe personally liked when they were alive, and the culture, our tradition and stuff, what we do within community or whatever. But yeah, our ancestors speak to us in so many different ways. The protection of our ancestors can be so beneficial. Like, there are so many different things that I have avoided, little things and massive things, in the last few years, that have really like stopped me from getting into situations and messes or conflict, or even just dodging something like a car accident, or not having to get caught up in traffic because there's a car accident around the corner. Like, the way that we, as we develop our relationship, are able to really listen is actually amazing. And yeah, within that, again, we learn how powerful we are as we learn how protected we are, and how connected we are naturally if we just allow ourselves to connect. But we have to create the room and space for that within our lives. And sometimes there can be a lot of things that are blocking us from connecting properly, whether it's conditioning, whether it's like societal, family expectations, fear as well, or even just a little bit of laziness, because it is a little bit of work to connect and enter into that lifestyle. But it's, you get the rewards for doing everything, even if you don't see the results straight away. Awesome. So we think we'll leave that there because we don't have anything else to say. And yeah, we did go like kind of jump from one topic to the other. Well, I think I did. So if anyone has any questions, yeah, feel free to comment them down below and I'll answer them, or email me. The email will be in the description. Yeah, I hope this was helpful to someone in some way, or just encourages one to connect today, every day, whenever you feel. And yeah, I feel like this video is just to open up like people's curiosity, especially people that are new to my little portal, and also allow, yeah, just encouragement for people that already connect to strengthen their relationship, because that's also something, you know, it's important for us to keep moving and continue to connect as well, and grow our connection in ways that we need to or feel, and not to stop where we are right now. Yeah, so again, happy Akwasidae, and I'll be back on here next week with a normal tarot divination. Sending you all heaps of love and peace and blessings, and love to you and your ancestors.